Hello and welcome to the Under Center podcast, the first Under Center podcast of 2023. I am your host, Daragh, and I'm delighted to be joined by Fionn Malloy on our first show of the new year. Fionn, happy new year to you. How are you?
Thanks very much, Daragh. It seems like we're the only two that made it through New Year's celebrations, I guess, maybe. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, it's good. It's going to be a big year for us. We're growing every year on year, so we did really well last year. Many thanks, as we always say to you as well. You're a big driving force in this show, so many thanks for all your work. We're all going to be behind you and hopefully chip in a lot this year and grow it even bigger and even better. So I can't wait to see what we can manage to pull together this year.
Yeah, thank you. And we do have an important year coming up on multiple fronts, not just obviously with the show, back playing football with the under center Pirates, North Dublin.
Not yet. We don't have a sponsorship gig yet.
North Dublin Pirates, of course, we start our new league in March, and we are definitely looking forward to that after a tough year last year. Of course, we did do an AFI preview of 2022 on the show a couple of weeks ago before Christmas. We were joined by some great guests, including Joe Kinnan from the Westmeath Minotaurs and Steve O'Rourke, a friend of the show, of course, but who's also the offensive coordinator with the West Dublin Rhinos. So make sure go and check that out on our podcast streaming service. Wherever you get your podcast, just search Under Center Podcast. Or if you want to go to our YouTube channel and watch it back, you can, of course, as well. Same thing. Go to YouTube. Just search Under Center Podcast. You'll find it there. Found it a very great and informative chat where we got to sort of air out some sort of I'm not going to say difficulties we have with the league, but ways just to sort of make the league better for everyone and improve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just our thoughts. There was nothing critical in it, I felt. Just our contribution. Look, we know everybody there is a volunteer. We have a lot on our plate in terms of Irish football. We'd love to volunteer as well. Maybe one day we will be involved in that side of things. But look, we have a platform. We do have a following in Ireland. We want to raise some ideas. Maybe somebody in there likes it. Maybe the teams, like we said, some of the ideas are maybe can be conducted outside of the AFI and kind of give them a hand and take some of the responsibility off them. And as a team, as each individual teams and as a league in general, try and grow the game in Ireland and not rely solely on the governing body. And they do a great job. The game has grown. It's getting better every year. And hopefully we continue to do that. That's all we were looking for. That's what we spoke about and all the guys agreed. And sure, look, nobody's perfect. There's going to be little niggles here and there that need cleaning up and tidying up year on year. But I think we're in a good spot. League's in a good spot. Teams are in a good spot by all accounts. They had the league AGM. Should be a lot of good, strong teams in every division this year. So I can't wait to get into the league. I'm sure we'll be following the league as we go on this channel, on this podcast. And we'll let anyone who's interested know what's going on in American football in Ireland.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely last year, covering the league was a big success for ourselves and helped us help promote the league too. And we will definitely be doing that again this year. Hopefully with a little more focused content. We'll see if we can, maybe dedicate a few shows to it and see what we can do going forward. Because of course, Joe, who was on the show before Christmas, of course, is part of his own podcast looking at the league each week. So it'd be great to have him maybe on a bit more often to have a look at it too. But Fionn, I mentioned that as well because I'm already in 2023 season mode myself personally. Some people are getting ready for it themselves, maybe stepping up their gym routine these past few days, getting ready for New Year, couple of weeks. Maybe some people are looking at getting the cobwebs off the gear after the Christmas break. I myself am currently wearing a new set of football boots that I'm trying to break in at the moment as we are live.
Under the table.
Literally under the table.
Well, I'd say, Daragh, a new girdle as well.
I am trying to get these boots molded to the shape of my feet, get my stink in there. Everyone has their own individual feet stink. So I'm trying to get them ready so that my feet aren't in bits for training this weekend.
I'm using the good old faithful. Mine are ready to go, locked in. So I can't wait to get back on the pitch. It's going to be a cold one. We should also mention, Daragh, it's coming towards the end of the season. Playoffs are kicking in. It's last weekend of the regular season is coming up. And people have been kind of following in, and every year new people get involved in the NFL. If you're watching the NFL, if you love the NFL, get in contact with your local teams. We are the North Dublin Pirates. There's other teams based all around Dublin and all around the country, particularly in Northern Ireland as well. They have plenty of teams. If you're interested, whether you're able-bodied and you want to come down and play, there's a position for every body type. If you're not quite as able-bodied or you just have a super interest in the league, we always need volunteers. We're happy to get people trained as coaches, an official Sports Ireland certificate in coaching. It's fantastic. I did it myself there over the Christmas break. Volunteers for each team. We know the Pirates would love to have guys just helping out with kit managers, things like that, taking stats on game day, maybe doing a bit of recording. Whatever you're interested in, we're happy to get you involved. Please do either get in contact with us on social medias, the show, or any of the teams, obviously. And if you head to the AFI website, you will see a full list of all the teams around Ireland, and find your local team and get involved, because it really is great. And with you guys, we can make it even better.
Yeah. And of course, if you do want to play and maybe you don't want to play the kitted side of it with contact, there is plenty of flag football teams as well. Absolutely. Available to you. Growing each and every year as well. I think we've seen a massive growth in the last year of just more teams popping up around the country too. So there's definitely going to be a team. Again, refer you to the AFI website for that too. They will tell you exactly where the closest team is to you in your area. So it's definitely worth checking out if you want to sort of start 2023 by getting more involved in American football over here in Ireland. But Fionn, we're going to go straight into the news, and we're actually going to, of course, have to start with the only news sort of around the NFL at the moment, and that is, of course, the emotionally draining week that's been for NFL fans and most sport fans around the world following the traumatic events on Monday night in Cincinnati, and, of course, the Buffalo Bills defender Damar Hamlin. The latest at the time of recording here on Wednesday evening is that Hamlin is showing signs of improvement. His oxygen levels are improving, although doctors fear there is some damage to his lungs. There's still no update whether or not the game will go ahead. We've been told for sure that it will not happen this week. Whether it's going to happen next week or not, we are still yet to be informed. So week 18 is still going to go ahead as previously planned, with the 2 games on Saturday and the rest of them on Sunday. But of course, Fionn, we have seen plenty of coverage this week, and I kind of want to get your feelings on it. I know you were like me that we didn't actually see it happen live on Monday night, as it was at 2 a.m. over here in Dublin, and of course we weren't able to stay up for it. But you know, to see the scenes then afterwards, the day after, and to see, you know, after such sort of a routine tackle, you would call it, seeing as we're both defenders as well, we sort of see this a lot, a routine tackle for him to get up and then fall straight back down. And, you know, I guess because we come at this from a unique perspective, as opposed to sort of maybe most other podcasts you'll listen to, that we do currently play as well. Obviously nowhere near the level of the NFL, not even close. But I want to see what were your thoughts seeing that, and seeing sort of the coverage since then.
Yeah, I think it's been quite shocking. Like, a lot of shockwaves in the sports world, as you mentioned. A lot of people in circles that don't normally follow the NFL have brought it up and mentioned it to me. So it's really had a wide-reaching impact. Any soccer fans will remember, not necessarily a physical collision, but Eriksson had the same thing for Denmark playing in the Euros. He collapsed on the pitch, cardiac arrest as well, and he was revived. His heartbeat was revived on the pitch as well before being taken to hospital. So for anyone who maybe still hasn't heard it and is listening to our podcast, that's what happened to Damar Hamlin. He made a tackle, seemingly innocuous, got up back to his feet, and then subsequently collapsed again. So very serious, very interesting. It's a very physical game we play. As you mentioned, Daragh, both of us play on the defense. Big hits. Obviously, as you said, not necessarily the same level as the NFL. The speed's a little bit slower. The impacts are a little bit smaller. But it, on something so innocuous, it's a reminder that it's a dangerous game. It's why we mentioned at the start, look, if you're not interested in that physical side of the game, there's other things around the game that you can do, because it is a serious thing you have to ready yourself for when you go on any American football pitch. It's a contact sport. It's a largely contact sport, as opposed to, say, soccer, which is a contact sport, but it's not constant contact. And it was really interesting to see the response around the sports world. It doesn't happen very often. I think that's something we should mention. That's why it's made such big ripples. Obviously, such a contact sport. You get a lot of injuries, broken arms, twisted ankles, ACLs, MCLs, this kind of thing. They do happen probably on a weekly basis. Certainly, people will know from the media in general that concussions are a big deal in the NFL. But in terms of these really seriously life-changing injuries, they don't happen very often. Every so often, someone will be taken off with a neck brace on, maybe once a season. It tends to be not too bad, over precautionary, and they tend to be out of hospital within a day or two. So for anyone who's looking for a bit of context, that's why it's such a big deal. It's very rare that a life-threatening injury happens on an NFL pitch these days, which is great. Really shows the signs of the improvement in the safety and the technology that the NFL are using. But yeah, that kind of, for anyone who's wondering why this is such a big deal, given it's such a contact sport, this is extremely rare. It's a very big deal. It's very similar to the Ericsson case. We're not used to seeing this. And I think one thing also to mention to maybe some people who have seen the news but don't follow the NFL, the upwell of support from the NFL fan bases is pretty incredible to see, to be honest. There is a history of this going back now for maybe the last 10 years. When players go down, especially with serious injuries, fan bases from around the league, they tend to donate money to their causes, to their charities. Damar Hamlin has a charity which raises money to give kids toys, kids in need toys that wouldn't be able to afford them. Especially important given the time we just went through at Christmas time. I think that's really important to highlight as well, how the community of the NFL is there to support in whatever way they can and try and help these players. And from something so tragic, now thankfully he's still alive and he's making good progress, as you said, but for him, such a life-changing moment, that something good for at least somebody else can come out of that moment. So I was quite proud to be affiliated with that. Obviously, we're much far removed from the NFL, I should point that out, but it was nice to see. I think that's really a good sign and the definition of why anyone plays team sports, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you brought up the GoFundMe page and the positivity that has surrounded with the NFL fans and the NFL family after what has happened, because it's very easy to go and highlight the sort of negative sides of it. We've seen with even the likes of Skip Bayless getting a lot of negativity towards inappropriate tweets. We've seen I can't remember who it was. It was someone on ESPN that was then trying to insinuate. I don't think it was as bad as people are making out about that. It was T. Higgins' fault for what happened. Again, I don't believe that at all. I don't think that T. Higgins should have any blame in this situation at all. It was, I think I saw it was a 1 in 264 million chance that this could have happened. You see this tackled at least 20 times a week in the NFL.
I wouldn't be surprised there if there's something underlying going on there that just no scans had picked up. Some sort of weakness in a heart valve or something. Just whatever that jolt managed to jolt is exactly the wrong spot. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something comes out later on that it wasn't a 100% healthy heart.
Yeah, and I should also commend the EMTs, the doctors, the actually the Bengals doctors and the Bills, because it was the Bengals doctors that came out first and then signaled for the Bills doctors, that what they did to basically save his life. They giving him CPR from what we think is 9 minutes. He had to be resuscitated twice. I myself know not firsthand about CPR. I am a first aid responder. I do know how difficult it can be in a scenario where trying to give someone CPR. I feel like this situation especially, I think, highlights the fact that I think everybody should do some sort of first aid course to learn CPR. Even if it is just a knowledge thing, because when it comes to it, you never know if you're going to be that one that's going to jump into a situation and try and help when there is something like that happening. Not everyone sort of has that, you could say, hero mentality to sort of jump in when things are tough. And it's a totally different scenario from, doing it in, say, a classroom environment to in real life. And you brought up Christian Eriksen as well at Euro 2020 with Denmark, and the Denmark players did what they needed to, surrounding him, stopping cameras from seeing it. It's things that I don't think cameras should be focusing on trying to see. And the Bills of players on Monday night did the exact same thing, and I applaud them for that too, because it is their friend, it's their brother, it's their teammate that they are all really concerned for. They don't know basically if he's going to live or if he's going to die. And I think this sort of, for want of a better word, voyeurism of people nowadays wanting to see like things like going on like that. I think it was a great thing that we didn't. And we just know the person of Damar Hamlin. We know the player. We know the charity work that he does. And like, as of the time recording, it's got over $6.3 million on the GoFundMe page, which is incredible for a $2,500 goal that was set up in the start. But like that, we send their thoughts and well wishes out to Damar Hamlin and the family. We do hope we hear better news as the week goes on. It seems like it's improving hour on hour, which is great. So we hope that continues, and that we at least see him get a full recovery from this. Whether or not he gets on an NFL field again does not matter. The fact that he's able to still live a full life after this is the most important thing.
Absolutely. And like you said, I just want to echo fair play to the first responders there, the medical teams of both franchises. Very impressive. It's not hyperbole to say that they saved that man's life. It's very rare in your life you get a chance to do that and make such an impactful difference to someone. But regardless of the outcome, they did everything they could to save that man's life, and I think that's a credit to them and a credit to their franchises as well. So yeah, we continue to hope for the best for him. I think it'll be much more difficult than Christian Eriksen. I don't know if we'll ever see him play American football yet or not, but as we also say, there's a lot bigger things in life than playing American football. It's something we love to do, but there's much bigger and more important things in life. And when he can get to walk out of that hospital and continue that life, I think he'll be happy enough with that trade-off.
Yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall when he wakes up and then he is told that his GoFundMe page has broken like $6 million at the moment. It could be 7, 8, 9, 10 by the time he realizes, because I'm sure he's going to be so happy with that. The fact that everyone wanted to try and do something in a time where where you can't really do anything, to be able to sort of contribute and help people in that way, I think is fantastic. And I hope that once he finds it out, he's happy to hear that. We'll move on.
I wouldn't be surprised if his first instinct as soon as he wakes up is to go into cover 2 in the hospital room until he figures out where he is.
It could be. It could very well be.
Jump out of the bed into a power stance and get ready to go.
We'll move on though, and we are going to talk about your Washington Commanders, Fionn. And we're going to talk about head coach Ron Rivera as well, because I want to ask you about them, because they have, of course, been eliminated from the playoffs last weekend after losing to the Cleveland Browns by 24 points to 10. The team went back to Carson Wentz as the starting QB for probably their most important game of the season, benching the previous starter, Taylor Heineke. First of all, was that the right decision? And then also, we've just heard this week as well that Sam Howell is going to start against the Cowboys. And what is your thinking towards that?
Yeah, I think that's important. I saw initially that they were going to start Heineke again and then let Howell finish out the game. That immediately raised an eyebrow with me. I didn't really understand why you would bother doing that. Either start Howell from the beginning or play Heineke all the way through. Whatever way you want to split it, that doesn't bother me which QB you pick. But to split it halfway on the last game of the season, to me, doesn't seem to add anything, unless they wanted to see if they could put a thorn in the side. I believe it's the Cowboys they're playing. Put a thorn in the side of the Cowboys. If they beat us and Philadelphia lose, they can clinch the division, which is obviously something they would want. And I think as Commanders fans, we'd certainly do anything we could to mess up the Cowboys beyond any other team in the league. So maybe that's what they were thinking. In the end, I think it's the right decision to start Hell. You want to see what he's got. It's going to be against a defense that needs it. that wants to win the game. It's going to be a true test of where he's at in his development. And yeah, I think it's a very weird situation. And I think we'll talk about it more. But for me, it all comes down to that quarterback position. That's not a particularly hot take, but if any team summarizes this than anyone else, it's got to be the Commanders over the last 5-6 years.
Do you think Commanders now are going to be looking at a QB with their first round pick in this year's draft?
I think they have to. Hell's the only quarterback on the roster with any guaranteed contract or any contract at all going into next season. So whatever they do in the offseason, I wouldn't be surprised if Heineke's re-signed again. I was trying to find, I read earlier his stats. I think he's 13-12-1 as a starter, which is not fantastic, but I think other starters in that same time are 2-7 or something crazy. So I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to scrape his way back onto the team. I do like him as a backup. I think he is the definition of a backup. He can come in, win a game here or there, 2 games on the bounce, no problem. But I think if you ask him to win over the course of a season, you're going to be in trouble. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I certainly think the quarterback panel coming out into this draft is much stronger than it was last draft. So I think by no means are we in prime position to get one of the top quarterbacks, but I think the depth is there a little bit more this season than last season.
Well, possibly. I think now, this is just off the top of my head, I think you'd definitely be in the maybe late teens, possibly early 20s at the moment in terms of draft order. There's a lot of teams obviously ahead of them thinking maybe the Lions are ahead of them, the Seahawks, of course, are ahead of them, the Bears are ahead of them. Those 3 teams won't be looking at quarterbacks. We'd probably think, now this is really, really early. I haven't even looked at a draft board properly. But you're thinking probably a Bryce Young is going to go number 1 to the Texans. And you also have the likes of CJ Stroud. You have Will Levis there as well. I think the quarterback coming out of Florida as well.
I think there's an older quarterback coming out of Penn State as well.
There is Georgia State. Georgia State. Yes, I remember. Yes, he's actually older than like 5 or 6 quarterbacks currently in the league. So that's someone to look at too. Again, I haven't done my draft research yet this year. This is just passing stuff I see along on Twitter too. But there is, yeah, like you're saying, Fionn, there is a lot more QB depth this year. So being in a mid-teen, maybe early 20s position in the draft might still get you one of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think there's enough in the tank as well to risk trading up. I don't know if there's anyone up there that will be willing to get out of a higher spot. It can be difficult trying to get up there because I think at the moment those top 10 teams, actually there is a couple of top 10 teams that are very strong teams that have layover picks from previous seasons that maybe will be interested in getting out of there in the top 10. I don't know, as you said, it's a little bit early to start the draft, maybe to start the draft processing and kind of doing up all the different calculations. But so I don't know what Washington has in the bank in order to try and get up there maybe a little bit. But yeah, I think it does need to be a big shot at a quarterback. I think they showed with Wentz last season that they're getting to a point now where they're willing to take shots at quarterback. They understand where the team is and what the team needs are. So I wouldn't be surprised if behind closed doors there are some talks already going on about how are we going to get ourselves up the board to get a QB we're comfortable with.
Yeah, and just for the record, I'm actually not in favor of Seattle getting out that number 3 pick.
Well, you guys need as bad as us. Come on now, Daragh.
I am putting all of my chips. Not even getting a quarterback at number 3. I want Jalen Carter. That's who I want. I want that defensive tackle. Defensive tackle from isn't it Georgia State? Yeah, it's Georgia State, isn't it? Yeah. That's who I want. I want Jalen. He's the top interior defensive lineman in the draft. I want him in Seattle because that's where they've struggled. Now, they've struggled a lot this year, but that's one of the positions they've struggled this year. And that's who I'm looking at. That or probably the next one then is the edge rusher, Will Anderson from Bama. I think he'll be the next one. So it'll be either of those. It depends on whatever the Bears do, whoever they want. And then obviously I think Seattle will take the other. That's also under the assumption that the Texans take a quarterback first overall, which I'm sure they would. They're not going to be keeping Davis Mills. But again, that's enough draft talk. I want to actually ask you about a video that came out after the game on Sunday with Ron Rivera, who seemed quite confused by the fact that the team could have been eliminated later on that day. I actually have the video here for anyone that hasn't seen it. I'm going to play it first, and then Fionn, I want to get your opinion on it. Let me see. I have it here. Yep, I do. Now, is it going to play for me? Let's see if I get that to play. There's no sound on that. Very sorry.
Nope.
But sure,
look, we're innovating. We're trying to innovate the technologies here. We're trying to iron out some bugs on the fly.
I'm trying to get it going, but look, it's not going to work.
We'll share it on our Twitter. Go to our socials. You'll see we'll put it up on our socials.
He was asked basically, if you are eliminated this week, will you start Sam Howell in week 18? And he gave that perplexed look, saying, "We can be eliminated today." Oh, literally his words were, Now, Fionn, we are Irish, and we know sarcasm. It is our second language. I think that was him purposely being vague because he didn't want to call out a reporter being stupid, maybe, possibly. He didn't want to call the reporter stupid for asking that question. But there's no way he didn't know what the scenario was going into this game.
Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't think it's that important for him to know that scenario. The head coach needs to win every game. So the aim of the game was to win. Being eliminated was taken out of our hands. So even if we lost that game, we weren't necessarily eliminated from the playoffs. We were eliminated in the end, but that was a result of other results that happened later on. So look, even if he didn't know, do I think it's a big deal? Am I worried about it? No, not really. I suspect there was a little bit of sarcasm. I suspect he was also a little bit miffed playing at home to get a not homer question, if that makes sense. A bit of a tough question from that reporter. So yeah, I think overall, did he know? I don't know. Maybe it's possible, but I'd much rather him not know we were going to be eliminated than not know we could have clinched, because the reality is it's the NFL. You're going to win every game. Who cares what happens if you lose the game? Because the reality is you should never be thinking about those scenarios. It doesn't help you win. It doesn't help you manage anything. As I mentioned before, the elimination was out of our hands. So it didn't matter whether if we weren't eliminated if we lost by 10. We were eliminated if another team won and we lost. So there was nothing we could do once we lost. It was out of his hands. And so I don't mind. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he did know. For me, it's not a big deal.
Okay. All right. We'll move on. And we are going to look ahead to week 18 a little bit here. And we're going to look ahead at the playoff scenarios heading into the final week of the regular season. There are still 2 spots up for grabs in the AFC and 1 in the NFC. We'll start with the AFC first. The Titans travel to take on the Jaguars in a battle for the AFC South and the 4th seed on Saturday. And then the final wildcard spot is going to be decided on Sunday between 3 teams, the Patriots, Dolphins, and Steelers. The Patriots are due to take on the Bills in Orchard Park. The Dolphins entertain the Jets. And the Steelers will be at home against the Browns. So, Fionn, who do you see taking those 2 spots? Firstly, between the Jaguars and Titans, and then for the final wildcard spot between the Patriots, Dolphins, and Steelers.
Well, you know what? The Titans have been really bad without Tannehill. And they can be flaky with Tannehill, but they've been really bad without Tannehill. I believe they're still without Tannehill. It's only dubious about whether he would make it back for the playoffs or not, even if they did make it in. So in that scenario, I'm going to go for the Jaguars. I actually like it. I think Lawrence has a lot of developing still to do. I think he relies on that absolute missile launcher he has. And he has a little bit more finesse growing into his game, but I think there's more room to grow that and more of the subtleties of the quarterback. He's certainly proved he's a tough runner with the ball in his hands. Maybe needs to wrap up a little bit. I noticed the ball come out a couple of times, maybe a little bit too easily. But yeah, I think it's a good story. What do you think? Given the season that they had to go through last season with Urban Myers and the disaster that was, what a turnaround to make it into the playoffs then the next season. What do you think?
Oh, a huge turnaround, and I don't feel that Doug Peterson is getting the credit he deserved. I don't think. I think if the Jaguars make the playoffs, I think he should be coach of the year. I know Dayball is the bookies' favorite, obviously, for getting the Giants to the playoffs, but the Jaguars were in a much worse situation with, like you were mentioning, Urban Meyer and that absolute, you know, the absolute shit show that was going on there, and him and everything in that organization, and for Doug Peterson to come in and turn it around, and for what he's done with Trevor Lawrence, what he's done with that offense as well, with the players they brought in, the players they've drafted, and the defense has improved so much as well. Of course, you remember the controversy over taking Kayvon Walker at number 1 last year instead of taking Aiden Hutchinson. Now he hasn't been as impactful maybe as he would have liked for being a number 1 overall pick. He still has contributed though to that defense. I think that I think the Jaguars should take it. The Titans have just fallen off a cliff. I think they've fallen off Fionn's cliff along with Russell Wilson and Derek Carr. It's not just Ryan Tannehill though. It seems to be the offense in general, because Derrick Henry missed the last game and he did absolutely nothing. And I don't know what his status is for this weekend. I think he's going to play. But Josh Dobbs is going to be the starting quarterback on Saturday for the Titans. They won't play Malik Willis. Are they already out on him after only drafting him? I don't know, but things seem to just be going south quickly for the Titans, and they're going to need a lot of surgery in the off season, whether that is the draft or free agency, to sort of get back to where they want to be.
Yeah, I think Malik Willis, I think you need to give him time. Look, everybody knew coming out of Liberty that he was branded from the very beginning as a project quarterback. So I think you keep him on. I think you see how he develops. He flashed what he needed to flash, in my opinion. Overall, as a starting quarterback, did struggle to have that production that you need to be a stable starting quarterback and secure in your job. But I think he showed enough to show that he might get there. He wasn't completely out of his depth. Certainly dangerous with the ball in his hand again, and the NFL is trending that way. You need your quarterback to be able to break the line and go and run it himself for 20, 30 yards when the defense isn't looking, and that's a favorable call. And I think he has the ability to make those calls as well and use his legs well. It's just, like I said, maybe with a little bit of Trevor Lawrence, there's a little bit of finesse still to grow into his game. And look, I think you're daft, you're crazy if you drafted him knowing the label that he had, probably having that label on him as well, and then being essentially forced to play him, right? He wasn't part of the plan to get him in the lineup this season, in my opinion. So why would you judge him on what he did when you knew he wasn't ready to go? And you drafted him for a project over the next 2-3 years. He's going to be cheap. Tannehill is not going to last forever and has his own limitations as well. So I think calm down. I reckon the Jaguars go through in this one. I reckon the Jaguars win the game, get into the playoffs. And as a Titans fan, I agree with you. There's plenty of stuff to do in the offseason. When you don't have a starting quarterback, Derrick Henry is a fantastic running back, but a one-dimensional offense in the NFL should never beat an NFL defense. They should be able to stop that run, no matter who's running the ball. And if your quarterback can't punish them, then that's a big problem. And I think they do need to figure out a quarterback. Maybe Tannehill is going to be okay next season. But I think for now, I wouldn't panic too much if I was a Titans fan. Certainly things to improve. Lots of teams are in that boat. But you're not miles off the pace. And I think anytime you have Derrick Henry and a competent quarterback, that's a really dangerous combination.
Yeah. And then for the final wild card spot, comes down, like I said, to the Patriots, Dolphins, and Steelers. Who you think is going to take that?
I mean, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? The Patriots haven't really played that great towards the end of the season. Mac Jones has flatlined a little bit, in my opinion. Tua Tagovailoa is clearly the best quarterback in that grouping of the three, with Pickett as well. But he might not play. He's still out. Yeah,
he's not. Him and Bridgewater
are both out. So that's going to make life. I think the Dolphins are clearly the best team out of those three. But have they got enough star power left to get them over the hump? They're playing the Jets, I believe, Daragh, who are eliminated. So that might help.
Yes, the Dolphins are playing the Jets, yeah.
That might help them out a little bit. So I guess if my money's down, it's got to go on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kenny Pickett, what's that wide receiver they had? Pickens?
George Pickens.
George Pickens and Najee Harris. That's always tough to stop. Who are the Steelers playing? Sorry, I should know this.
They are at home to the Browns.
Yeah, I'm going to go, of those three, I'm going to go Steelers. It's not who I think should be in the playoffs, but I think based on what all three teams have left and what they can roll out on the pitch on Sunday, I'm going to go Steelers. What about you?
It's tough. If Tua was playing, I would have said yes, easy. The Dolphins are going to beat the Jets. Because even after seeing the Jets play last week against the Seahawks, the Jets were awful. Absolutely awful. On offense especially. Defense, they did play better. But on the offensive side of the ball, they couldn't do anything. Mike White, I think, he came back too soon from that rib injury. I think he should have sat the season and they should have allowed Joe Flacco to at least finish the year if they still didn't want to play Zach Wilson. The Steelers, I find, is incredible because for all the season, people have been, putting the Steelers down and basically saying this is going to be the first year of Mike Tomlin's reign that he will have a losing season. They're 8-8 currently. They win. And they have that. He continues a streak of winning seasons every year he's been in charge of the Steelers. With the Dolphins rolling out, I think it's Skylar Thompson. They also signed Mike Glennon today, so I don't know which one of them are going to start on Sunday. They still have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. All you need to do is get the ball to them and just let them go. I'm sure Sauce Gardner will be on Tyreek for that game. So we'll see what that battle's going to be like. It is so tough, though. It's so tough. If you twist my arm and tell me I have to pick someone right now, I think I'm going to go with you and I'm going to say the Steelers. I like the idea. Kenny Pickett, the rookie, the one that said his
tiny
hands are too small for the NFL. Yeah, he was not. He will. I'd like the idea to say that he's going to make it. So I like that story, and I like the fact that the Steelers could make it. So I'm going to say the Steelers as well.
We're agreed.
No, we're agreed. One of the rare times we are agreed, actually, on this now. Let's talk about the NFC final wildcard spot because it's a little more complicated. It's not straight out totally. So there is one spot up for grabs, the final wildcard spot. 3 teams are involved in it. It's the Seattle Seahawks, the Detroit Lions, and the Green Bay Packers. Now, where it gets a little muddy is, okay, so the Seahawks play at home to the Rams this weekend at 4:25 Eastern time, 9:25 Irish time, in the second slate of games. Then, on the Sunday Night Football, the Detroit Lions are in Lambeau against the Packers. But by the time that game kicks off, the Detroit Lions will know whether or not they are still involved in the playoffs. Because if the Seahawks win that game against the Rams in the second slate of games earlier in the day, the Detroit Lions cannot make the playoffs. Then it will only come down to the Packers and the Seahawks to see who can win. And then if the Packers win that game, they make it through on their record in the NFC. And they have a better record against NFC teams this year than the Seahawks. So it's kind of a little muddied. They're obviously, being a Seahawks fan, there's a few Seahawks people complaining, like fans, I should say, no one actually associated with the team, complaining that the game is not on at the same time. If the Detroit Lions, see that the Seahawks win, they may not try and win the game against the Packers, causing the Seahawks then to lose the playoff spot. I don't buy into that narrative. If the Seahawks hadn't lost all their games against the worst division of football, the NFC South this year, they wouldn't have to worry about this. If they hadn't gone and lost 5 of the previous 6 games before last weekend's game, they wouldn't be in this situation. So that's the issue around them not making the playoffs. It's not the fact that they're going to kick off earlier and them winning means the Lions aren't going to be bothered in winning a game. But the way it is, I still think the Seahawks will beat the Rams, but I still also think that the Packers are going to beat the Lions, which means I have the Packers making the playoffs. Fionn, what do you think?
I agree. It's very technical about how it's going to happen, but you just don't bet against Aaron Rodgers to make the playoffs, and it's as simple as that. I think I agree with you. The Rams are no hopers this season. Seahawks can beat them. I agree with you. Stop whinging. You're trying to make the playoffs at 8-8 in the last game of the season. You don't have any right to say, oh, but the games aren't going to be on at the same time. Sorry. If they were playing Detroit or Green Bay and it was a head-to-head, they would be the Sunday night football game. I agree with the NFL flexing that game. It's a head-to-head, winning you're in, playoff scenario. Well, of course, actually, that depends. It's not if Seattle loses, right? Or if Seattle wins, then Detroit is out.
Seattle wins, yeah. The Lions cannot make the playoffs whether they win or not.
So, yeah. I mean, I don't think the Lions will take it easy, but also I don't think that Green Bay Packers will lose that game. I think Aaron Rodgers just wins that game 99 times out of 100. He's been on a tear recently. They started off awful. Once again, they've come storming back. They have not looked great. They're also at 8-8, obviously, like the Seahawks. So it has been a subpar season for them. I don't think any of the Packers fans will be too pleased about where they've ended up. But yeah, I think for me, it's easy. You just don't bet against Aaron Rodgers making it into the playoff when it's a win and you're in scenario. I don't care who they're playing. I don't care what the outcomes are. If all he needs to do is win to get into the playoffs, I'm betting Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, fair enough. And like that, I agree. I think when it comes to sport, it's all about at what time you peak. The Seahawks peaked in October when they had, I think, a 4 or 5 game win streak.
Mm-hmm.
The Packers are peaking now, just in the time when they need to for the playoffs. And it could be that that's the difference between them making it and the Seahawks not making it. And look, listen, again, on the Seahawks side of things, there's an argument to be made whether or not the Seahawks actually do want to make it into the playoffs. Because if they do, there's not a lot of confidence around them actually going far in the playoffs. They could be a one and done in it. And especially the fact that they lost their best linebacker in Jordan Brooks at the weekend too to an ACL injury. You know, the offense has stuttered a little bit as well. The offensive line is falling apart. And it looks like they could end up facing the 49ers if they do make it in as that 7th seed. And the 49ers have beaten them twice this year already. It's difficult to see the Seahawks progressing any further than wildcard weekend if they do in fact make the playoffs. Whereas with the Packers, you think that they would have a better chance of possibly upsetting the 49ers if they were to make it into the playoffs.
Absolutely. I think if you're an independent fan, you just want the best playoff football. I think you'd rather of those 3 quarterbacks, you'd rather Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. I think that's going to be spectacular. And they always have a chance, right? They've always got a chance to win. When it's win or go home, Aaron Rodgers is the man normally until about the conference championships. Then he falls apart a little bit. But yeah, I think if we want a good playoff team, it's the Green Bay Packers all day long.
Well, maybe he's doing an Uno reverse this year. You know,
I think that's what he is. Going under the radar.
Yeah, most years. Yeah. Most reasons he's great in the regular season, wins an MVP, and when it comes to playoffs, he bombs. Maybe he's doing the opposite. He's been
got rid of all of
underwhelming underwhelming this regular season, and then now in the playoffs, that's when he's going to raise his level.
Darrell, what about all these people that kept saying Aaron Rodgers doesn't care, and Aaron Rodgers is checked out, and Aaron Rodgers isn't trying very hard this season? I think he needs a little bit. I know a lot of people don't like Aaron Rodgers, right? He's got a personality that can rub you up the wrong way. But as Aaron Rodgers as a football player, I think he needs a big I'm sorry from a lot of NFL fans and pundits that were questioning his drive to play. The man is a 2-time back-to-back, or sorry, a 3-time, but a 2-time back-to-back NFL MVP. And he didn't have a great season this year, but here he is playing for a win and you're in scenario to get into the playoffs. He's a great football player. Whatever you think about him off the pitch, the man is a great football player, one of the best we've ever seen in terms of what he can do on the pitch. And I'm excited and I'm glad. Once again, he's spat in the eye of so many NFL pundits. Not me, though, I have to say. And that's why I'm bringing it up.
Oh, yeah, you're
another one I've called.
Too bad you can't call our predictions each week as well either.
Yeah, no, well, look, the start of the season was a roller coaster and it kind of got me down. I've been keeping pace, but unfortunately, keeping pace won't close the gap. So, look, it is what it is. I also finished second last in fantasy, but my defense let me down. I had the most points against, and you just can't win. You just can't win. They're going to have to figure out something about that there in fantasy. That's just not fair.
It's not fair when Fionn doesn't win. Okay. We'll move.
Yeah.
We'll look into that for next year.
I avoided the forfeit though. I avoided the forfeit. I finished second last, not last, so I'll take it.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. We'll move on to our final section of today's show, I should say, and that is a different one actually. It's another prediction one. Since this weekend is the final one of the regular season, Monday after week 18 is commonly referred to as Black Monday. That is where owners of teams who have underperformed this year decide whether or not to retain their head coaches or GMs for next season. We already know the Broncos and Panthers will be on the lookout for new head coaches following Nathaniel Hackett's and Matt Rule's firings. But Fionn, I want you to give me a few names of who you think may not be returning to their team next year. Now, we'll kind of go one name from you, one name from me. We'll probably pick two names each in total. So your first name of head coach who you do not think is going to be returning next year.
My first name is one that I think should not return. I don't think there's any excuse to have him back. That's Josh McDaniel of the Las Vegas Raiders. The quarterback, he has had his starting preferred quarterback the entire season. He had Devontae Adams. He had Jacobson at running back. Two studs at their position. Devontae Adams set the team record for receiving yards this year inside the previous NFL 16 game schedule. So we didn't even need the final game of the season to break the record. And they have been abysmal. They have not made it anywhere close to the playoffs. They're 6-10 at the moment. They're guaranteed to have a losing season. I just think that's not good enough with supposedly the talent that you have. The defense, you've got Max Crosby there, an absolute game wrecker in a defense. Some other names in that defense are blanking a little bit, but by no means are they a bottom 5 team in terms of defense. And as far as I'm concerned, that makes those offensive weapons no excuse. And I think it has to come down to the coach. We'll have discussions, I'm sure, as these names come out. I always have sympathy for head coaches, especially when obvious starters go down injured. That's one thing. Ron Rivera, which I'm surprised we didn't mention. Maybe he's on your list. I don't know. You can certainly bring that up. He brought in Carson Wentz. It didn't perform well, but also Carson Wentz got injured. And so that blame is kind of 50-50. But for me, Josh McDaniels has no excuses. He has no outs. He had all the weapons that he needed as far as I was concerned on offense. They performed and he didn't. He couldn't get them the wins in the win column. And that for me is inexcusable and he's got to go.
Okay, fair enough. I did see reports about them looking at possibly removing McDaniels, but it could be that he might survive only on a financial basis. Supposedly they are cash strapped at the moment and they can't really afford to pay off his contract. So we'll see what happens there. My first name is kind of an obvious one as well. He has been on the edge all season. And it's not the edge of glory. It's not a Lady Gaga song. This is definitely the edge of oblivion, and that is Cliff Kingsbury. And I do not think he's going to be coming back to the Arizona Cardinals next season. Things have gone from bad to worse, no matter what has happened in his tenure. I know he's had this weird stat. It goes back from his Texas Tech days as well, where he starts off the season great, and then when it comes to the second half of the season, they just bomb. This season, they just started poorly and continued poorly throughout the whole thing, having issues with his quarterback as well, getting that, I think at the worst time possible, that fly on the wall series of Hard Knocks in the mid-season. It's not the team that they... great for viewership, not great for obviously the team and when they're going through the worst possible period. The issues in the background as well, GM Steve Keim going on gardening leave for an undisclosed period of time for reasons we are not aware of. Them firing one of their offensive line coaches in Mexico for inappropriate actions towards a woman. Just this season has just been a disaster for the Cardinals, and I think that Cliff Kingsbury is going to be the one that's going to lose his job because of it.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a trend, right? These kind of weird, niggly stories that come out, like it came out against Urban Meyer, like things like you have to put a clause in your quarterback's contract to make him study. Like these are weird things. They're usually red flags. Kyler Murray did get a little bit injured during the season. Obviously, that is a crutch he will use to try and save himself and say, I didn't have my starter. But to be honest, he was more than available. Hopkins obviously missed the first few games of the season. He came back. But yeah, it wasn't good, especially for one of these. He keeps being billed as these offensive minds. And it looked well, but it seems like teams can figure him out a little bit too easily. And like you said, has this now reputation of not being able to close out seasons. So we'll see. I agree with you. I think he's going to struggle. And I think he might be on the chopping block as well.
Yeah, I think so. And look, yeah, we know with Kyler Murray and the ACL injury that he suffered. I think actually Kingsbury said today that he actually had a successful surgery on it, that he had to do a total reconstruction on the ACL. So, which is tough, obviously, for Kyler, and we wish him all the best and hope he gets back soon. But like that, like you mentioned with DeAndre Hopkins as well, missing the first 6 games of this year due to a PD violation. There's so much going on, but I think that he is going to leave. We are pressed for time a little bit. We'll get through these second names very quickly. Fionn, your second name of head coach that you think could leave this off season.
I did my first one that I thought most likely would leave. This one is one I think should leave, but probably won't. My favorite character in your life, Daragh, it's Pete Carroll. We've talked about this a lot. He's really ingrained in that Seattle team. He might as well be an owner now at this point. The only chance you have is if he retires, because he's essentially not going to fire himself. But I think all Seahawks fans won't have any particular problem with me saying that. They have underperformed the last couple of seasons. They have been undercoached the last couple of seasons. I think Geno Smith's hot play at the start of this season was more down to his natural abilities than Pete Carroll's fantastic coaching. And I just think on the coaching side of things, I think he's a little bit beyond his best years now. I think if he was any other coach, they probably would have slowly moved him out of the way and got fresh blood in there. So I'd like to hear your opinion quickly before you give me your last name. But yeah, Pete Carroll is one. Again, I don't think he will go unless he chooses for himself that he's done. But maybe if you could choose, would you give him the sack, or are you happy enough and you think maybe the holes are from some other cause?
Mm-hmm. Before I get into it very quickly, at the start I mentioned that the Broncos and Panthers are looking for new head coaches. I forgot to say the Colts as well. They fired Frank Reich mid-season. They're also looking for a new head coach. It's interesting you bring up the Pete Carroll thing, because I don't think he's going to get sacked, because basically, like you mentioned, he kind of runs it himself. He's going to have to sack himself. So I don't think he's going to do that. There has been murmurings in Seahawks Twitter about the possibility that he may retire. I don't know if they are substantial claims. I don't know if they do have any weight to them, but people are pointing out things that he's saying in press conferences and his mannerisms a bit, that he is not the same Pete Carroll he has been in previous years. He's not as energetic as he has been. Look, the guy's also like 70, 71. You know, he's not going to be jumping around off the walls, although he is often called one of the most, energetic head coaches in the NFL. Look, I had my doubts last season about whether or not Pete Carroll was the man to take the team forward after the Russell Wilson trade. Hindsight is a great thing, because it just shows he was a genius for letting Russ go. He's gone with Geno again. I didn't think that was going to work out. You can say for the majority it has worked out, because he has won more games this year than a lot of people thought he would. The defense, though, for years has been a struggle. He did draft quite well this year. He has more than enough draft picks this year. That's if he stays on. So I guess I'm happy to Very happy. I'll be happy for him to continue on another year, if he continues to draft as well as he did in this one, because I know this is a big one with 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks this year as well, and one of them is going to be a very high pick. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think he's going to leave. But if he does, I'm still going to be very sad about it, because he has been the Seattle Seahawks. He's the guy that brought the Seahawks their only Super Bowl in the team's history, and brought them to another Super Bowl, came within, a goal line interception from winning it. So we'll see what happens. But I'm okay with him leaving. I'd be sad if he does leave.
Fair enough. What's your last chopping block?
I have 2 names here. Again, I think I'm going to go along the lines with you in terms of this is a head coach I don't think is going to be fired, but I think it could be a head coach that could leave his team. I mentioned it on a previous show before, and that's Rams head coach Sean McVay. There was so many rumors last season after winning the Super Bowl that McVay could quit and take up an analyst job. He just got married. He wants to start a family with his new wife. Being a head coach in the NFL means you're away from home more than you're at home. I think that he'll want to be around, especially if they are starting a family for the first couple of years. Being an analyst means he gets a lot more free time.
He's already set up in LA.
He's already set up in LA, exactly. He has said that his futures is tied to the futures of the big players. Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford. A lot of rumors is Matt Stafford may not come back next year. Aaron Donald, we don't know if he's going to come back next year. Cooper Kupp, we assume he's going to come back next year. I don't think that's a doubt whether or not he's going to come back. But I think with how this season has gone as well for the team and how poorly it's been, maybe it's just taken a toll on him too much that he's going to be like, I need a break for a couple of years, maybe get into the analyst job, and then in maybe 3-4 years, I'll come back and be a head coach.
I can see that happening as well. Yeah, I think he was very stressed at the end. I don't think he'll be happy with how this season has gone. Like you said, yeah, I was joking, but I think it's true. Like you said, his future is tied to big players, and Aaron Donald's not a guarantee to come back next season. Matt Stafford, I couldn't really care. I'm still not impressed by Matt Stafford. I'm sorry. I know he won a Super Bowl. I don't think he was the best quarterback. I'm sure they can come up with a new quarterback. I don't know how upset he'll be if Matt Stafford ends up going, but they have certainly shown that their backups are not at a starting caliber. So they will need to be on the shopping list, gone around Amazon, see if they can pick up a new quarterback. If they do, I think he has a chance to come back. But yeah, I agree. I think he's perfectly set up. There's a lot of dominoes already ready to fall for him to get out of NFL head coaching right now and pick up a really nice life for himself. Which, look, that's like we said, some things are more important than football. And this might be a case of being drawn away to what he always really wanted, not necessarily being a football head coach, like you said. Very time consuming, a lot of time away, a lot of stress as well, especially when the team doesn't perform like he had to deal with this season. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, yeah, I think that's one to keep an eye on of maybe an off chance that we don't start next season with Sean McVay as the head coach of the Rams.
Yeah. And of course, things will become clearer this time next week when the regular season is finally finished, and we will see who is still in charge of their team for sure. And we will, of course, be here to comment on whatever moves are made by any of the team owners or GMs. But that's where we're going to wrap up this edition of the show. Fionn, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Daragh. It's been a pleasure, as always.
Make sure you are following us on our social channels at UnderCenterPod on Instagram and Twitter. That's where we are most active. You can get us on Facebook too, if you want. Or YouTube, Undercenter Podcast. You'll find it there. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you will find us too. Just search Undercenter Podcast. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever podcast app you use, Google Podcasts, we are there. But like I said, we are going to wrap up this edition of the show. Once again, our thoughts and well wishes are going out to the family of Damar Hamlin. But we will be back next week to look back at the final week of the regular season. But until next time, stay safe and we'll see you soon.